अथ सिद्धांत रहस्यम।
Siddhant Rahasya, Secret of Principles. In Vikram Samvat 1459, on the gorgeous night of Ekadashi in the month of Shravana, Sri Mahaprabhuji was being engrossed in thinking about the salvation of divine souls. Waiting on Thakurani Govind Ghat, the subject of his anxiety was how to establish relation of living entity entrenched in illusion, having false ego and material attachment with pure absolutely truth like Supreme Lord. Realizing the distress of Sri Mahaprabhuji, which was unbearable by Supreme Lord, appeared himself, ordered that living entities can be connected with Supreme Lord, Brahma Sabandha, after self-surrendering everything, Atma Nivedan, one has. This is the text. Granth is the proof of that path of grace. Pushti Marg has started with the direct order of Supreme Personality, Lord Shri Krishna.
श्रावणस्यामले पक्षे एकादश्यां महानिशि साक्षात् भगवता प्रोक्तं तदक्षरश उच्यते.
Verse 1. On the gorgeous midnight of the Ekadasi of the bright half of Shravan month, Shukla Paksha, whatever was being said by Sri Krishna himself to Sri Mahaprabhuji is being told here verbatim. This first verse is spoken by Sri Mahaprabhuji only. The rest of the verses are the voices coming directly from Supreme Lord. The presiding deity of Shravan month is Lord Vishnu. Therefore, his order occurred in this month. The fortnight that is without any fault, Amal, because the process of life of living entities to cleanse the dust of false ego, Ahamta, and material attachment, Mamta, is being indicated. Clean fortnight with any fault, dispelling the ignorance of living entities, start of brilliant life, and hence is called bright fortnight. Amalapaksh Mahanishi. The process of purification of 11 senses of a living entity by self-surrendering all of them is being told in this scripture. The order of surrendering of all 11 senses is related to hence 11th day Ekadashi, the process of communion with Supreme Lord Brahma Sabandha by removal of darkness of ignorance of many births, having connection of the surrendered living entities with the help of absolute truth, and hence is known as glorious midnight. In accordance with this scripture, the order of Supreme Lord is communicated via oracle, dream, great experienced people, or by inner inspirational voice. But here, Sri Vallabhacharya is conveying that Supreme Lord himself has appeared in his divine form directly and not in any other way. Damodar Dasji is politely replying the sentiment of a servant that I have heard the voice of Supreme Lord but could not understand much. Therefore, this scripture has been brought to us as a proof of Pushti Marg has been started by direct order and desire of Supreme Lord through the explanation given to Damalaji.
ब्रह्म संबंध करणात् सर्वेषां देह जीवयोः सर्वदोष निवृत्तिर्हि दोषाः पंचविधा स्मृताः.
Verse 2. After getting connected with Supreme Lord, that is Brahma Sabandha, all the defects attached to the body and soul, which are described as 5 types of defects in Smriti, that is Vedas, do not obstruct the perform of service seva to Supreme Lord. This verse begins with the voice of Supreme Lord himself. That night, the main concern of Sri Mahaprabhuji was about the impurities defect of living entities. So, at this instance itself, Supreme Lord is assuring about this matter that the defects happening via gross body or subtle body, mind, intelligence, etc. can't obstruct the performance of the services, that is divine work seva. Having connected with the faultless absolute truth, Supreme Lord, all the defects of the external senses as well as the defects of internal senses like material desires, anger, greed, etc., of that living entity gradually vanishes away. Even pathological disorder, etc., like nuisance, can't obstruct service rendered by them. And 5 kind of faults described in Smriti, that is Vedas, also cannot obstruct their performance of service. These 5 faults are explained in the next verse.
सहजादेश कालोत्था लोकवेद निरूपिताः संयोगजाः स्पर्शजाश्च न मन्तव्याः कथञ्चन.
Third verse. In this world, and as per Vedas, 5 kinds of defaults have been expressed: natural, sahaj, arising due to country surrounding, desotha, arising during the time in place, kalotha, arising out of context, sanyogan, and arising due to association of bad company or objects, means sparsha. Natural faults, sahaja dosha, grating birth of a female, service class, inferior class, Stri, Shudra or meat eaters. According to the Vedas, they are not allowed to perform holy deeds and physically handicapped. All these people are incapable of performing service, worship of Lord as per the terms of scriptures, as also living entities under control of their nature eternally. So material desire, anger and greed are attached by default with the living entity, which means that physical body as well as the subtle body are fully infested with defects. There always remains a possibility to get some defects manifested in gross body, which is created from 5 major elements because of lack of connection with Supreme Lord, which needs to be eliminated and purified in all the paths of worship through the process of Bhuta Suddhadvaik. But if connected with the love in this path of devotional service, then this purification process is not required. In this service, devotional love for Supreme Lord, these natural faults can't be an obstruction. Fault occurring due to country surrounding Desotha, country of barbarians where cows are killed, nuisance of atheists, land in a mode of ignorance where sufferings of fighting, violence, etc. prevails. Many of such places are not permitted for religious activity as mentioned in the scriptures. Vedic activities performed in those places do not fructify. Such places of service, worship, etc. must be purified in accordance with the processes defined in the scriptures. But performing loving devotional service, all the above mentioned process is not considered mandatory. Faults because of time period, means kaladosh, defects arising due to defect of time of Kalyuga, defect due to inauspicious time occurring repeatedly due to movements of stars and constellation, eclipse, etc., and obstructing defects of body like old age, etc., arising due to such time. All these faults arising due to faulty time does not obstruct loving devotional service to Supreme Lord. Faults arising out of context, sanyog dosh, connecting with the members of scheduled class, meat eaters, menstruating women, particular time of people in where death or birth of family has occurred, people of impure mind and barbarian intelligence, etc. require purification through many kinds of baths and processes like Tara Sutak, period of ritual impurity. At the times of purifying from some faults arising due to special type of contacts with them, specified above, requires atonement fast. Subsequently, after that worship, etc., only pure activities can be performed, but performing eternal services to Lord, all these above processes are not required for connecting with the loving devotional service, because in that situation, these processes can create an obstruction. Fault arising out of the touch, sparsh dosh, touch of any of the untouchable referred above, or as also pure utensils, place, holy sitting cushion, or any other paraphernalia of service worship, etc. If it gets polluted due to impure touch, then the elaborate process of their purification has been explained. But in devotional service, there is no need of purification from such defects. In today's times of day-to-day life, for educational practice, for commercial activities, for jobs, etc., one has to travel daily by vehicles. Visit of different places need to be done on daily basis. During commercial or educational activities time, meeting and eating together keeps on happening repeatedly. Due to such coincidences, there is always possibility to get in touch of daily and again impure people mentioned above or menstruating women. In such times, performance of Tarasutak or process of cleaning needs to be done. Then there will be no scope of performing for service of Varshul. And in today's times, there is no country where cow killing is not done or no violence is occurred. So in such contact, does it mean that service worship must be stopped? Will worship like religious activities fail to fructify? In such times of Kali Yuga, the defects of time are especially visible. In such adverse situation and time of coincidence, these 5 defects will be obstructive in offering services to Supreme Lord, etc. This happening is very highly probable, but after connection with Supreme Absolute Truth, here special mercy of Lord can be observed, and that these 5 defects are not considered while in service to that Supreme Lord. After getting Brahma Saban, Sri Raghunathji orders that owing to daily body contact of living entity connected with Supreme Absolute Truth, possibility of occurrence of such defects is very minimum. Sri Purushottamji orders that in path of devotion, body, senses including all their relative activities, whenever everything is offered to Supreme Personality of Godhead, all these activities can also be faultless. Therefore, in such emotional state of devotion, these 5 defects can't create an obstruction.
अन्यथा सर्वदोषाणां न निवृत्तिः कथञ्चन असमर्पितवस्तूनां तस्माद्वर्जनमाचरेत्.
Paragraph 4. With no other means, all these defects can ever be destroyed, but for that it is necessary to keep rejecting the unoffered things completely. Through connection with Supreme Absolute Truth, Brahma Sabandh, the special mercy is ordered for destroying all the defects, impurities, but for that life of complete surrender is expected. The very first condition for this situation to happen is that everything belonging to Brahma Sabandh, living entity, must be offered to Supreme Lord. Thus, everything should be dedicated. In 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Sukadevji Goswami is narrating that if some sinful acts remain even after giving of charity, performing austerity, etc., then devotion towards the Lord Vasudev can only completely destroy them, just like morning sunshine destroys drops of dew. Sri Sukdev Goswami is narrating that these sinful activities get destroyed when devotion is performed with complete surrender and self-dedication only. In Bhagavad Gita and other Puranas, order that all activities of devotees get perfection only through self-dedication and complete surrender. Since such defects are not destroyed by any other method, therefore it is necessary for the Vaishnavas to do self-dedication, that is, whatever belongs to the living entity, all should be dedicated to Supreme Lord. Thereafter, it is very important that food, grains, clothes, etc., everything shall be accepted in the form of remanent mercy of Supreme Lord. The gross and subtle mind, senses, etc. bodies are created by grains. Therefore, by taking remnant of foodstuff offered to Supreme Lord, all senses becomes free of all defects. As is the food, so is the mind. So the mind and intelligence become divine by only taking remnant of foodstuffs offered to Supreme Lord. The gain has 4 divisions. First is the blood, flesh, bone, marrow, etc. Second is semen. Third is subtle mind and intelligence. And fourth is one is excreted as waste. Therefore, remnant of grains offered to Supreme Lord makes complete body transcendental. Such self-dedication living entity must accept everything in his right after offering it to Supreme Lord and completely reject everything not offered to Lord. After everything in one's own rights, offering everything connected and with one's body and soul, it is necessary to have relationship with everyone with that transcendental mood. Only faultless things are being offered to such faultless Supreme Lord, so that this process of offering by the surrendered living entity becomes faultless.
निवेदिभिः समर्प्यैव सर्वं कुर्यादिति स्थितिः न मतं देवदेवस्य सामिभुक्तसमर्पणम्.
Fifth verse, paragraph 5th. The surrendered living entities should always offer everything to Supreme Lord with devotion. It is the principle that anything that is partly offered to the others or partly enjoyed by others, balance can be offered to Supreme Lord, who is the Lord of all demigods, that is Sri Krishna. The one who has self-dedicated oneself to Supreme Lord must perform all the activities after taking orders from Supreme Lord only. For the subsistence of his life, whatever activities either worldly or prescribed in Vedas are executed, those must be performed only after taking order from Supreme Lord. As an example for activities like marriage in his home, should spend only whatever is necessary. All charity, donation, etc. shall be done only in accordance with the complete process outlined in Vedas and not for earning fame or glory of oneself. And this necessary expenditure should be done only after offering to Supreme Lord. In every activity, the position of one's dedication to Supreme Lord shall be maintained. Ardha Bhukta, that is, anything that is partly offered to others or used by oneself can't be offered to Supreme Lord, like things, grains, cloths, etc., necessary for subsistence of life, whatever comes to home, but first taking part of it in one's own use and then the rest is offered to Supreme Lord is called Ardha Bhukta. Offering, when living with family, the finance like fee for children, medicine for family membership, use for other family members other than Supreme Lord, such expenditure used after taking order from Supreme Lord is not treated as Ardha Bhukta. The self-dedicated living entity has also surrendered body, soul and senses even after offering worldly matter and things. Therefore, special engagements of body in the service of Lords is necessary. Service to family members is also necessary as the family is also connected to Supreme Lord. It is necessary to keep in mind intelligence, etc., because with our surrender jointly, all of them have been offered to Supreme Lord. Thus, having love of family members, considering them connected with Supreme Lord, life becomes completely surrendered because it is necessary to get rid of semi-free surrendered mood of living entities connected with Brahma Sabandha.
तस्मादादौ सर्वकार्ये सर्ववस्तु समर्पणम् दत्तापहारवचनं तथा च सकलं हरेः न ग्राह्यमिति वाक्यं हि भिन्नमार्गपरं मतम्.
Paragraph 6th and half of paragraph 7th. Hence, every activity and everything should be offered to Lord Sri Hari in the very beginning. Taking back given things, Dattapahar, and everything belongs to Supreme Lord, Sakalam Hare, that is not worth accepting. This sentence is from Doctrine of Different Paths. This is not in accordance with the view of Pushtimarg. If need to perform any worldly activity or activity prescribed in Vedas, it should be performed as an offering to Supreme Lord. Taking order of Supreme Lord in all actions not only execute duty of servant, but that also makes living entity remain connected mentally with Supreme Lord. It is necessary to continuously keep offering all such activities and things. Having to surrender home, money, grain, food, stuff, everything has been offered to Supreme Lord. After that, how all those things can be utilized for us? Or can we make use of ourselves of grain foodstuffs offered to Supreme Lord? If such doubts arise, then here it is being revealed that, as mentioned in other paths where the donation is the process, which after offering it to demigod, the same cannot use same things for own consumption. Because those items become Deva Dravya, it is belonging to demigod. Donation means the change of ownership from donor to the donee. The recipient of donation, therefore, donor cannot utilize things for himself once donated. But in the Pushti mark, it is not donation but considered as an offering through the feeling of surrender. Hence, everything can be consumed by Vaishnava after having taken order of Lord in the form of remanent mercy of Supreme Lord, that means prasad, everything offered including grain, food, stuff, also etc.
सेवकानां यथा लोके व्यवहारः प्रसिद्ध्यति तथा कार्यं समर्प्यैव सर्वेषां ब्रह्मता ततः.
This is paragraph 7 and half of paragraph 8. The system of behavior between master and servant, which is famous in the world, same shall be followed here. Do everything in the form of offering to Supreme Lord and offering from all surrendering relatives were all of them connected to Supreme Absolute Truth, getting Brahmatva. Just like in the material world, the servant serving the master lives in the master's house, makes use of his home, food, clothes, etc. But without forgetting that all that belongs to his master, and everything is first used for master and thereafter taking permission of his master, the servant then makes use of them for himself. In the similar way, Brahma Sambandhi entity connected with Supreme Lord has surrendered his all belongings like house, relatives, matter, its body and senses, everything to the Supreme Lord. Therefore, Lord is the actual owner of all this matter. So, accepting ownership of Supreme Lord of one's house, etc., having offered a Lord and taking order from Lord and accepting everything to keep the relationship of master with servant. Tatha karyam, offering everything along with all relatives, creating realization of Supreme Absolute Truth in everyone, Brahmatva, after relatives having also got connected with Supreme Absolute Truth through Brahma Sambandh, they don't consider them with materialistic relationship but consider their relation in connection with the Supreme Lord and act accordingly. By acting this way, the duties of servant can be sustained as also thereafter money utilized for the benefit of relatives like education, medicine, etc., including the time spent for them. For example, children and others appear to be the waste of time or everything appear to be half semi-surrendered ardha bhukta. At that instance, a mood of divinity is imbibed in all those relatives with Supreme Lord has been perfected. Then the transcendental mood, acting as Vaishnava, keep this feeling that in present, today or in future, everyone, children, etc., is for the service of Supreme Lord, then everything will be called supernatural and surrendered. Since in the path of Pushti Marg, it is necessary to reach to the mood of best feeling of same Supreme Lord in everything or everyone, so one has to reach up to Sarvatam Bhava.
गंगात्वं सर्वदोषाणां गुणदोषादिवर्णना गंगात्वेन निरूप्या स्यात् तद्वदत्रापि चैव हि.
Paragraph 8, paragraph 9, first line. Just like after the impure water emerges into Gangaji, the impurity of the water vanishes. That water takes the form like Gangaji water and the water gets the same respect as the Ganga water. That happens here in the same way. Here also, that is after getting Brahm Sambandh, one's earlier impurity is polluted with illusion, false ego, ahanta and material attachment, mamta are not considered, and that living entity will be called like Brahma if that living entity's submission relates to Brahma completely. The living entity having connected with innocent Supreme Lord Brahma achieves innocence gradually, just like the water flowing in dirty sewer drain after dissolving with Gangaji. It is recognized as Ganga water only. It is treated the same way like Ganga water, that worshipped and glorified, etc., and its earlier bad form is not considered. In the same way, after getting Brahm Sambandh, earlier faults of the soul are not considered, and that the said living entity achieves purity in Brahm. Sri Mahaprabhuji is mentioning in Nibandh that heat will always be felt in one approaches nearby to experience fire. Similar way, if the living entity keeps the close association of Supreme Lord, will surely obtain the qualities of Supreme Lord. In this way, after connecting absolute truth through all senses, there remains no doubt of any old faults left with him. All attributes of absolute truth will be bestowed in that living entity. Thus ends the Siddhant Rahasyam prepared by Sri Vallabhacharya. In the scripture Siddhant Rahasyam, one brilliance can be observed that in all the scriptures, all Vedic texts, it is mentioned that the following the path of knowledge, path of fructified action, etc., dispelling false ego and material attachment, when the heart of living entity purifies, then Lord will appear in that clean heart and the spiritual journey of living entity moves forward. By extending charity and pious activities, cleansing of old sinful activities has to be occurred. But here it appears that Sri Mahaprabhuji is so dear or Vallabh to Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, that he could not bear the anxiety of Sri Mahaprabhuji for salvation of living entity. So he ordered and agreed to accept living entities as they are, infested with all the false ego, material attachment and full of illusion, and conveyed the process of purification of that living entity will happen gradually after connecting with absolute truth. In ninefold devotional process, also when the living entity gets purified, though different processes like hearing, chanting, remembering, etc., then achieving the last ninth stage, that is surrender everything, whatever one has, Atma Nivedan Bhakti. But here, after a living entity offering himself as it is to the Supreme Lord, that living entity accepting mantra of 5 syllables, Panchakshar or 8 syllables, Astakshar in life, and dealing fructify the relation with absolute truth after gradual cleansing, and thus the living entity being separated for thousands of years, revives his eternal relationship with complete process through bliss of austerities. Sri Mahaprabhuji has not disclosed that prose mantra here in this scripture which was ordered by Supreme Lord. The mantra of complete surrender, Shastakshar Parivastal, due to being very esoteric, being very secretive, and by publicly processed, not everyone having authority to know it. Thus ends Siddhant Rahasyam prepared by Sri Vallabhaji.